Thank you both for being here. Since we have you both here, I think I'll just start with a question about the role of Clara. I think an amazingly richly drawn, very specifically drawn character. Did you write it with Sonia Braga in mind? And if not, how did her casting change the role?
I actually wrote the script thinking that I would find the perfect Clara on the street, in a supermarket somewhere. And after about 6 months still working with the script, I realized it would not make any sense because it's a very demanding role. And then we basically went for the best and the biggest, Sonia. We sent her the script, and she reacted in less than 2 days. We'd Skyped about the script, and she had the most amazing reaction to what she read. In fact, she reacted like she had seen the film 2 days ago, 2 days prior. And I came to New York in June last year just to meet her and talk about the film, because I didn't want to be at the arrivals gate at the Recife International Airport with Sonia Braga, just because I did not know Sonia before. And that's how we came to work in the film. The film, of course, a lot of what you see in the finished film is the character I wrote. I came to realize a few weeks ago, especially when I was in Paris giving interviews, I finally said it. There is a lot of my own mother in Clara. So I think the film is a projection of what she would be at 65 or 70, because she passed away at 54. But of course, Sonia was a perfect match, and there is a lot of Sonia in Clara also, and I feel very lucky that we got to work together, and that Sonia got to be Clara, because now I don't know where Clara ends and Sonia begins. I probably knew during the shoot, but not anymore.
So, Sonia, we just heard Kleber sort of describe your reaction to the script as you told it to him. Can you tell us how what struck you when you read it?
Well, can you hear me? I can speak really loud, but don't ask for things that you cannot take it. Hello, everybody. So good to see you here. Thank you. So I live here in New York, and maybe we bump to each other sometimes without knowing. I'm nothing like this. So I was like not being in the movies in Brazil, in Portuguese, for a long time, for 20 years. And so that's when came in the bottle the message that Kleber needs to talk to me about a movie, and he sent me the screenplay, and I read it, and it was so amazing because I realized while I was reading that it was the best screenplay I ever read it. And it's hard to explain how when an actor have the kind of experience that going to another dimension and meet the character, you know, it's like a really, never thought about that before. But it is like really a science fiction thing that you're reading and you meet the character somewhere. That was so deep that it was to me, that role. So I called immediately and saying yes as soon as I finished. And then we met by Skype, and and we had some conversations, and then Kleber came here to New York, and we had a little walk, and we went to a nice place and talk, and it seemed like I've known him for a long time, and what I think that happened, really, he was spying on me because he knew so much. How could he? So that's what happened.
Can you talk about the decision to make Clara a critic? I think it's one of the most like affirming and flattering portraits of a critic ever in a film.
What was that again?
One of the most flattering portraits of a critic ever in a film. And you are a former film critic, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it works on several levels. I think her relationship with music allows for some really lovely choices on the soundtrack. But I think also having her, it's sort of it's almost like an act of resistance in a way to have a critic, somebody who really cares about culture at the center of your film.
I usually stick to things that I can do, and I think her being a music critic is a thinly disguised version of film critic, which, of course, I worked as a film critic for 13 years, and I had that character in me in some way. But something, again, very interesting happened in Paris 3 weeks ago. I met a French friend of mine whom I had actually met in 1996, and at the time we stayed in at her friend's house, which was an apartment in Paris full of records. And this person, Véronique Montagne, she was until 3 months ago, and she was for many years a music critic for Le Monde. And then I realized 3 weeks ago that me staying for a week in that apartment was actually the genesis of Clara. I could think about the apartment and the, you know, the number of records that she had in the place, and the idea that she thinks about culture and then she treasures culture and music and artifacts of culture, books and things like that. It was always a very strong idea for me, because sometimes it strikes me that some families that I visit in Brazil, and I say this, I'm not really judging, it's just an observation. Some families do not have any cultural artifacts in their house, no books, and this is something that strikes me. And of course, when I go into somebody's house and I see the number of books, it also strikes me as something that is interesting. And I wanted Clara's place to be full of these little documents, which are, you know, not only photographs or pieces of paper, but books and records, because each and every record is one small document.
Can we talk a bit about Clara's apartment, which I think is very important, really, even as a character in the film. It's a fully inhabited and imagined space, and this was a real location and not a set.
It's a real location, but we redid the apartment from scratch. For me, it was very important that the apartment felt cozy and simple, and at the same time comfortable, and something that someone watching the film would probably want to be there, or maybe even be able to draw, make a kind of a map of the apartment once he or she saw the film. It's a place that it's interesting that in one of the press conferences for the film in Brazil, one of my collaborators in the film, the art director, he said something that he hadn't told me. He worked with me in Neighboring Sounds, and he said that in Neighboring Sounds we would go into a location, and I would basically go, yeah, all right, let's shoot. But with Aquarius, it was a very specific and different experience for him, because every little detail had to be what in my mind would be in the right place. So it was my first actual experience with a proper concerns over art direction.
Any challenges shooting so much of the film indoors, and specifically in this one space?
We do not have the. It's not usual. I mean, we don't have a film studio in Recife, so each and every film shot you know, for the Recife film scene is shot on location, and this was completely shot on location. The biggest challenge was the noise from traffic, because right across the street there's a lot of traffic, and we had some serious issues with sound, recording dialogue particularly. But other than that, it's just the physical challenges of shooting in a location. You know, the walls are real walls, you can't move them, and you know, you have to bring in equipment and cables and things like that, but manageable.
Yeah, particularly if I could pick a studio or location, I would go for location. And, you know, I understand sometimes actors, they do not like to stay in the movie set, and I never understood why, because it's such a trip to be there, and especially when there's a challenge, like Kleber is doing, how to move a grua.
Crane? Crane.
Oh yeah, a crane inside of that apartment and go over the thing, the window, and to show the beach that is over there. And when I wish I was, do you know when you say, I wish I was a fly? Oh, well, I was a fly, you know, and I could see all these movements of beautiful equipment flying over my head. And to do what do? We make movies. That's the making of the movies. So to be as a person that likes visual arts, to see how that it is made is just like such a trip for an actor, I think. You know, the way they move in the movie set, the way they recollocate the objects, and, you know, and the people are moving, the lights, that for me it's the essence of the movie. Turn them on, you see nothing. So, or turn them off, and you see nothing. So to me, to be in an apartment that's a real thing, listen to the noise from the streets and the ocean and everything, I think it makes more the movie really alive. It's when, you know, when you see people standing off the camera and in a studio, and you see they are at the beach or somewhere, and you see the wind, and you feel the life printing in the pictures. That, to me, that's the difference between, you know, the movie in the movie set and the movie really in on location, that you feel like there is life in here, you know. And see the guys moving around is spectacular. Yeah, it is.
Just one more from me before we open it up. It's been hard to avoid the sort of political discussion around the film, and I just wanted to get both of you to maybe just address it, whether or not you intended to. You made a film that obviously struck a nerve. This is a film about, you know, it's with this particular woman's clash with these particular developers, but it seems to have, I think, is resonating on a big picture level in Brazil today, which has been reported, I think, fairly well, even in the English language press. And I'm wondering if either of you want to address that before we open it up.
Yeah, it's curious because Neighboring Sounds was also seen as a very kind of critical, having a very kind of critical view on Brazilian society, but at the time, 2013, it was the quiet before the storm. Actually, things began to go downhill politically. I think July 2013, and that's when the country got very divided in a very kind of simplistic way. Of course, the leftists and the people from the right wing, that's basically how sophisticated the whole division is right now in Brazil. And last year we had another political film, I think in English it's called The Second Mother by Ana Mulheres. And it went, I mean, it made its point. It was a popular film, a strong film, but but it went without incident, basically, mostly like neighboring sounds. But this year, as things got more dramatic, we went to the Cannes Film Festival to present the film. And at that time, the whole impeachment process had begun after a very dramatic April 17th historic day in Brazilian Congress. And when we went to Cannes, they had slashed the Ministry of Culture. So we just felt that it was very democratic and natural to make a point and say there's something wrong, something strange going on in Brazil now. And it had a massive, it really hit a nerve. It was picked up by, media, international media, Brazilian media, and of course the film itself has a strong point of view in terms of how society works. And we got a lot of support from millions of people, literally, and we also got a lot of attacks. And we were on the front line, basically, of this film that was not yet released. In fact, for 3 months, people were discussing the film without actually having seen it. Every time it screened in an international film festival, it would just, there were copycat protests all over, in Sydney and Munich and in Paris. So it just became a symbol for something, and when it finally opened in September 1st, it just became a kind of a cultural phenomenon because it seemed to play with the idea of catharsis, political catharsis, and then of course we got the 18 rating, which was very unusual and suspicious because other films which are even stronger sexually, I think, and this was widely discussed in Brazilian media. They had, they got 16 or 14, and then the whole Oscar thing took place. And every time something happened, it just became a huge controversy, a lot of discussion in the media, and this is where we are.
Yeah, well, Kleber told the story since Cannes, when we were in the red carpet, and it was a good moment to talk to the international press, to let them know for the ones that I didn't yet, because we were before that day in interviews one by one, trying to explain what's happening, and came with the Congress, the voting for impeachment, and that at that moment, and with the ministry going away simply, and so we complain about that as well. So it was like a back and forth of not understanding that we were only using our rights as citizens, individually or as a group, as in a democracy, what you should do when you don't agree with the acts of some. And then was one thing after another, and attacking a movie that was being accepted by international press, for the Brazilian press, and the public. So in my view, I think that it's not a government that decides who should represent Brazil. That is the audiences that saw that internationally, that saw the movie as a Brazilian movie. So we are representing Brazil since Cannes and our trip to Europe and here now. And the decision of not choosing our movie to represent Oscars, it is the decision of a government that I do not recognize as their taste. I haven't seen the movie, so I cannot say particularly anything about this movie,
The other film.
the movie that they chose. Probably, I cannot judge that, but I can judge the attitude of this commission. Well, and particularly myself, I've been representing Brazil abroad for more than 30 years as an actress, and I hope to continue my career internationally or in Brazil, speaking my tongue. This is the first movie that I did. I've done, it was a gap of 20 years not making a movie in Portuguese, in my tongue, with so much love, with so much recognition from the international press and everything, and not be able to be recognized by this group of people. It was just, to me, not understanding what's going on. I don't really know what's going on. So, well, sooner or later we will, but you know, I think it's very hard when governments choose the best foreign film, because who are choosing these movies? That's my question. Or I never thought about that really like deeply as I am right now.
Okay, we have time for a few questions.
Hi. There's a lot of fascinating stuff about family and history in this film, and the thing that really jumped out at me was the decision to create sort of a parallel to Clara and the aunt character in the beginning of the film. I was curious if you talk a little bit about that, because I found that very moving.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I made this short film called Green Vinyl. It's from 2004. And it's really about how a daughter becomes the mother as time goes. With time, the daughter becomes the mother through not only through all the things that the mother gave the daughter, but through a natural process of living life. And it's interesting how it resonates, because she's only in the film for maybe 6 or 7 minutes, Aunt Lucia, in the beginning of the film. But somehow there is a very strong connection between her and Clara, and also between Clara and the girlfriend who comes from Rio. This is a connection that I have heard a few times, and I think it's only natural that in a family, or not even in families, but sometimes you meet someone and you have a relationship which could be, it could be just a friendly relationship, or could be just a connection that you make with that person, and then somehow you pick up on things that you will take with you, even if you never see that person again. And this is something that is always in my mind, not only my personal life, but I think when I wrote the film, and it's for me, it's fantastic that people are picking it up.
What a fearless performance, Ms. Braga. Thank you very, very much. The question for... on every level, including what happens as we age and we're movie stars, international movie stars. So thank you for the courage of that performance. My question has to do with, cinema has always been able to play a part in a political context, which may have not have been the intention fully in the making of it. And here you are in this sort of Marlon Brando moment with the Oscars. How do you stay true to your original concept of what you were trying to do with this film when it's tossed into the social media world, which does very little to do with the aesthetics or the creativity or what made you take this part and what made you want to make this film?
That's a great question.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Well, you know, when I was in the middle of it, late August, early September, I kept thinking of all the other films, going back through cinema history that somehow got picked up by, I don't know, by society, by politics, and just became completely out of control because whatever. And I think it's a beautiful thing, in fact. You make a film, you do your best to be honest, you write the things that you would like to hear or maybe that you heard once in your life and you want your characters to say, and it plays, it seems to strike people in the best possible way, and then when it doesn't strike them in the best possible way, it makes them angry and they react against the film. And I think it's a beautiful thing because films are organic. And what you said about the inability to appreciate the aesthetics, I don't know, I see what you mean, but when you make a film, you have to just show it, and you have to see what will happen and what's been happening to the film. I mean, the film came out in France last week, and the things that have come out in France about the film are so beautiful. I even try not to read everything because it's too much information, but sometimes my wife comes and says, "No, listen to this." And it is an amazing feeling because actually this is a very local film. I made the film 1 mile from where I live.
One information, his wife, Emily, is the producer of the movie. So she says as a wife and as a producer, right?
And she's French.
And she's French.
Listen to this, and then it's in French. So I don't know, it's a beautiful thing. That's the only thing I can think of. Even if there's a lot of ugly things also taking place, even that is beautiful also.
I think art makes that, you know, like, that's what we do. And I just realized when I did that I wasn't doing this for almost 20 years. So my role, every time that I did a movie in my life, it was the channel to have a platform to meet the people that I'm interested in, the country that I love. You know, when I go downtown in Rio to have the relationship with people, I even recognize some people that saw my movies before they recognize me. Because I say, you see this movie, right? And so this movie, it's very special in many layers, and I think that's the way Kleber did a little bit. Kleber, it's a kind of, I think, archaeologist and musician at the same time. So he digs as much as he can, and when he finds, he goes a little bit deeper to find the real treasure of it. And he makes the film like what is important is not, this is me, I don't know if he thinks another way, but that's the way I think about his movie that we did. And as a musician, because the important time in the music, it's the time that is the silence. That's what makes the music. So what we do is that we do in the most honest way, from the honest part of your where you come from, which you carry a very important channel to reach people. And when it goes to them, to the audiences, is there now. People are telling me they want to meet with Clara. And and I want to meet with her as well. I think she's a wonderful person. And the only difference now between me and her, she's 65 and I'm already 66. You know, not fair.
That's not fair.
It is fair. Actually, 66 even better.